So we learned about the elastic scattering in the previous lecture, and we uh, discussed about how high energy electron in the electron microscope can get scattered uh, through elastic events, though there are some inelastic events also. These are inelastic events, but these are all elastic events, right? And then we learn how different, what are the ways, what are the mechanisms through these elastic events can happen from single atom. So we wanted to understand first the scattering from elastic scattering from single atom. So once we understand the scattering from single atom, so we can then understand the scattering from collection of atoms. That's our material. Right? Material is collection of several atoms. We can't understand anything about our material, electron interaction, elastic interactions from our material unless we understand the uh, science of single atom. So for single atom, I explained that you can split the problem of elastic interaction into two parts. One is basically electron-electron interaction, and another is electron-nucleus interaction. So there in the nucleus interaction, you have Ze, which is the charge uh, in the inside the nucleus, and here you have to multiply later on. Okay. Actually, Zoom plays sound when somebody enters or exits, and it was distracting me. So I forgot to turn off that sound actually. So every time so Zoom has this option that uh, it's by default actually that somebody enters into Zoom room or somebody exits. So it plays basically a sound which is not very appealing to the ears. So I had to turn it off. Yeah. So then we understood the electron nucleus interaction through the Rutherford cross-section, Rutherford scattering, and this is the Rutherford formula for alpha particles. And then we modified that, and we got the differential scattering cross-section for electron nucleus interaction, right? And then we understood what are the problems originally with the Rutherford cross section. So Rutherford Rutherford equation had uh, some problems. So we actually considered those problems, and then we use that same equation with some modifications for our purposes. So our job becomes much easier. So we don't need to reinvent the science. Actually, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. So once we solve the Rutherford equation for example, for copper, uh, this is for single atom. Please note that this is for single atom. Okay, single atom electron nucleus interaction. Okay, electron interaction is not considered so far, but it will not modify this uh, these curves uh, greatly. I mean, they remain more or less same. So you can see that this is the scattering cross section, and this is the scattering angle, and this is the electron energy. You can see that for higher energy electron, the electron scattering cross section becomes smaller, and similarly, if you decrease the um, Z, which is the atomic number, so the scattering cross section again goes down, right? It's going down in this direction, and so that helps us to understand the mean free path. Mean free path helps us to uh, explain basically that what should be the sample thickness. So we reached to this conclusion with the help of this equation that how thick our sample should be to avoid multiple scattering. So we learned that for carbon, we can afford to take a thicker sample, but for example, for gold, we need to take much thinner sample, right? So this part is already covered. So what I'm going to teach you today is already taught. Okay. Remember the onion structure. I keep repeating this phrase. So today we'll be actually we'll be understanding this curve more to draw more conclusion, because we have to finally draw conclusion about electron diffraction from this. So because this looks featureless, this curve, these curves look featureless. So let's see what we can do with these curves. So Rutherford scattering. So we have to see that high angle Rutherford scattering cross sections are electrons are incoherent. So there is no phase relationship between them. So this question was asked in the exam from few students. So these high angle scattered electrons, I'll just show you. So what I'm talking about is basically number 3 and number 4. So these electrons are incoherent. So they don't have a crystallinity information. So they form basically Hadaf. Okay, they contribute to the high angle. Okay, so they contribute to the Hadaf. So you have understood Hadaf very well. We have spent a lot of time explaining Hadaf because it's very important for chemistry community. So this is you will see that there's a repetition. So if you missed previously, so you can revise it now. So high angle Rutherford scattering scattered electrons can be used for image formation in TEMs. So such incoherent scattering is important in 2 aspects. High angle forward scattering can be used to form exceptionally high resolution images of a crystalline specimen in which image contrast is solely due to the value of Z, not the orientation of the specimen as the case of low angle coherent diffraction. So this is the problem in coherently diffracted electrons, because there you have information from the crystallinity of the specimen. So here the crystallinity contrast is missing. So you know that I have been telling you that you have the crystallinity contrast, mass contrast, and thickness contrast. When I say mass contrast, basically say atomic mass. Now we call it atomic. I mean, it's pop because of historical reason we used to call it atomic mass, but properly we use the proper term is Z, right? Atomic number. But in literature they still use mass contrast in electron microscopy for some reasons. So Z contrast provides qualitative atomic resolution elemental analysis in addition to showing atomic resolution details at the interfaces between regions of different Z. Okay, so this you can read. I didn't want to. Okay, so this is already covered, and these are the notes for you. Okay, now I'm now revising atomic form factor, which you have learned previously, I think in the previous lecture series, which we finished the week before. So there we learned that the overall intensity or the diffraction intensity is contributed by 2 important factors. There are other factors also, which are like instrument factor or something like that. We are not going to dwell upon those things, but primarily the like atomic form factor and the structure factor, right? So now we are going to look a little bit in detail. It's actually revision. I would have avoided that, but it's fine. I mean, so atomic structure factor you can read from different sources, but you get the same information. You can read from. So this that time probably I did not find anything else. So I might have taken from Wikipedia, which also gives you sometimes good information, but you have to be careful. So I occasionally, you will see that mostly I take information from Barry Carter, but occasionally from different sources, different websites, and only for teaching purposes. So atomic form factor, structure factor is the scattering amplitude, which we learned last time, the scattering probability of a wave by isolated atoms. Please note that. It is the property of a single atom. Okay, it depends upon the nature of the incident radiation, whether it is X-rays or electrons or neutrons. We have learned it all, right? All form factors, please note that whether it is X-rays for X-ray or electron or neutron, involve a Fourier transform of the spatial density distribution of the scattering object from real space to reciprocal space. Now, it depends upon what is the spatial density distribution. So for so for X-rays, it is, what is that? For X-rays, it is electron density distribution. Electron density distribution. Okay, just only electron. And for electron as a source, it is basically your potential charge density distribution, or potential more precisely it is potential density distribution, which is actually which is coming from both nucleus as well as from electrons orbiting around the nucleus. So it is the contribution of negatively charged electrons and positively charged nucleus for electrons. And I'm repeating it, for X-rays, it is only electron density distribution. And neutrons, we have understood it as two contributions, which one is magnetic and another is chemical, right? Yeah. So for spherical symmetrically object, so see, for objects are rarely, objects are not spherically symmetric, but it is just taken for an approximation. They are taken as a spherical symmetric. So spatial density distribution function can be written as f of q, and you can see that it's the integral of rho r. You don't need to remember any of these things, but you have to understand. Actually, understanding is more important rather remembering these terms. You don't need to remember actually. So you can see that this is the reciprocal space. You can call it Fk also without any harm, because okay, or you can write Fq. You can, some books write Fk because it's k space. Okay, and so you're basically taking volume integral. It's d cube r, and rho r is the density distribution function. How the electrons are spaced into the that's why I was showing you that animation. So you basically show the electron cloud. Okay, remember that red curve which was basically troubling me, the red animation. So this term basically represents how the electron cloud is spreading in three-dimensional space. Okay, that's why it is taken as a, there are, it's a tree here. It's volume integral. Okay, so for electrons, it is basically potential density distribution. Okay, in space, which is R, spatial density distribution, and density is basically electron density or potential density distribution. Okay, and the reciprocal, you can take the volume integral. Okay, so you have Q dot R, right? So that's it. As a result, the nature of the Fourier transform, the broader the distribution of the scatterer in the real space, the narrower the distribution, because so in reciprocal space, everything becomes inverse. So larger the dimensions in the real space, so the dimensions will be smaller in the reciprocal space. So, so the faster the decay we see in the reciprocal space. Fine. So X-rays are scattered by electrons. We are repeating it. The amplitude of show you, yeah. So this is for this is typical graph for X-rays. You can see that for sulfur, carbon, hydrogen, this is the atomic scattering factor or atomic form factor, whatever you call it, as a function of sine theta divided by lambda. Okay, so you can see that more electrons means more scattering. We have all discussed these points, so that it is proportional to Z and inversely proportional to sine theta divided by lambda. So, so scattering per electron adds together. So helium scattered twice as strongly as H, as hydrogen, right? So X-ray form factors are scattered. X-rays are scattered by electron cloud of the atom. So the scattering amplitude of X-rays increases with the atomic number. Okay, so X-rays are not very sensitive to the light elements, hydrogen or helium. Additionally, there is very little contrast from the element adjacent to each other in the periodic table. We have all discussed this. I mentioned that neutrons, they are much better to resolve the neighboring element. And this is the example. So this is the comparison between the neutron form factor, which you have been asking me, and so you can see that neutron form factor, which is here, is independent of Z. So you can see that it is independent of angle as well, and there is no I mean, you can see that lithium is here, and hydrogen is here, and then lithium 6 is sitting on the top, and then okay, so you can see that now you have hydrogen 3, hydrogen 2, and you have different kinds of, like, you have carbon 12, carbon 13, all kinds of random scattering amplitude. Okay, so it is denoted as B in the nuclear physics language. And but for X-rays, you can see that it falls in a very systematic manner. Okay, so this is basically this is by nature, the laws of nature, and so this is very powerful, because that means you can see that there is a vast difference between isotopes. Also, you can easily distinguish between isotopes. Okay, you can easily distinguish, but it is not possible in X-rays or electron. You can't forget about isotopes. Actually, X-rays are not sensitive to the isotopes, because X-rays don't interact with a nucleus. Please note that. But electrons, they interact with the nucleus, but they interact with the charge of the nucleus. So they are not sensitive to how many neutrons are. Suppose it has one neutron more, that isotope, or one neutron less. So electrons don't bother actually. I hope it is clear to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Aji,
sir, sir, scattering of X-ray is dependent on the jet. So, sir, scattering of neutron is independent on jet. So, sir, depend किस पे करता है, means scattering neutron को?
किसी पे नहीं करता, random है, madam. That's what I'm telling you. It is all random. Okay.
So, sir, scattering of hydrogen and scattering of copper is same for neutron.
Sorry, can you repeat your question? Scattering of hydrogen?
Yes, sir. Scattering of hydrogen or.
So what I mean to say that scattering from, for example, platinum can be less than the scattering from cobalt for neutron. There is no relation. It's random actually.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So it is random, and that's an advantage actually.
Okay, sir.
It's a big advantage actually. Yeah. प्रियंका कैसी हो आप तुम? हाँ?
प्रियंका नहीं सर, मैं प्रियांशी हूँ।
प्रियांशी, अरे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता। हाँ, प्रिया तो प्रिया के बाद में कुछ भी लगा दो, प्रियांशी लगा दो। हाँ।
Yes, sir.
हमारे यहाँ तो we have actually one student who is Supriya, अच्छी वाली प्रिया है। सु मतलब अच्छी और प्रिया, राइट? तो उसने तो अपने नाम के आगे सु लगा दिया है, मतलब अच्छी वाली प्रिया है, मतलब कंफर्म कर रही है।
ओके सर।
प्रिया, हाँ, मतलब क्या करें हम, सु लगाना पड़ता है हमें भी, अच्छी है नहीं है।
यस सर।
क्यों सुप्रिया? हाँ,
न्यू नेम सर।
हाँ, सु और लगा दिया है अपने नाम के आगे जबरदस्ती। मैं भी लगा सकता हूँ, सु पंकज, समथिंग लाइक दैट।
Yes, sir.
अब लड़के तो लगाते नहीं है. Somebody is calling me. Just a moment. I've got a call from. Yes, Santosh. संतोष मैं पढ़ा रहा हूँ हाँ एक क्लास हाँ I'll call you back. Yeah. Okay. So दिनेश तुम भी लगाया अपने नाम के आगे सु दिनेश. Okay, enough of humor. Back to seriousness. So any
Hello.
other question? Yes.
Yes, sir. Sir, वो scattering cross section also depend upon energy, so it will depend
depends upon energy of the incoming radiation. Yes.
So it will affect the scattering also, no?
Yes, energy. Yeah, obviously, energy, angle, and Z for X-rays and electrons. Yes. It depends upon energy also. I showed you the formula, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So for higher energy, scattering is scattering cross section is less. Please remember that. It is counterintuitive, but for higher energy, there is a less chances of interaction. Harsh?
Yes, sir.
Harsh, what I explain it. Always the example that suppose Harsh, you are going from your home to some shop in the market, and suppose you are walking one evening like this, and another evening you decide that you will go on bike. So so you interact with the people more when you are walking, or you interact with people more on the way when you are going on bike.
Sir, by walking.
Walking, exactly. So when you walk, you have lower energy and you are walking in the slow speed. So you have time to interact with the birds and bees and trees and with the people and the traffic. You see the shops and the signboards and who is inside the shop and the noise and everything. But if you go on bike, you really miss out all those things. And there is a heavy helmet on top of your head, right? You really miss out. So I love walking into the cities actually. I don't like to go on a vehicle. So because you interact actually. The same thing is true for the electrons. When the electrons slowly go through the lattice, so they interact. Their interaction is much more. So please remember that. Okay, so they interact more. But high energy electron will not spend much time in the lattice. They don't. It's like you are going on Ferrari actually. That's why I wonder. There is a bike race. What they they pack their body. They're completely packed actually. Completely like a mummy. They become like you have seen those bikers.
Yes, sir.
They all look like they're Egyptian mummies. They're completely mummified. They're completely packed like a mummy, and they're running somewhere actually. They're just burning fuel, and they're going from place A to B, and they keep on running. They don't enjoy. They don't enjoy. They're completely packed and sweating and everything, and they're burning fuel. So that's not. It's basically a fashion from West, and they have to mimic those things. So I love walking actually. Anyway, I want to walk from here to probably Himalayas one day. Yeah. So yeah, I would do that actually. Once I retire, yeah, I will do that. So electron form factor is the potential distribution of atom. Okay, that's what I told you. The potential distribution of atom, which is basically the collection of electron as well as nucleus, and electron form factor will be the Fourier transform of that. So anyway, this electron form factors are normally calculated from X-rays form factor using Mott-Bethe formula. We'll come to that, and plus nuclear scattering, right? So basically it's a summation of both. So we have not. So basically that Mott-Bethe formula is the first part, electron-electron interaction, right? I told you that we will borrow it from X-ray people. So far, we have discussed only about electron nucleus interaction, which we have borrowed from Rutherford and his students. Okay, now we'll use Mott Bethe, NF Mott. I think you know about this great man, NF Mott, Navier Mott, and Bethe. I think you know they were the giants. So we'll plug this equation, and then we have the complete part. So we have the electron part and the nucleus part, electron part and the nucleus part. I repeat, so far we have only considered the nucleus part. That also we did not do anything. We just stole the equation. Okay, we will be stealing one more equation and then we'll be adding up. So that's what we are going to do. Here it is actually. Now you can see that we have the scattering cross section, which is part of now you can see that we have added or rather subtracted actually, because negative sign is because of the electron charge, because of the electron. So this is other way it would have been positive. You can see that we are using Fx, and this is actually borrowed from X-ray people. Okay, this is modified Rutherford formula multiplied. If you multiply it by Z. Okay, so I will erase it so you can see it clearly. Please spend some time here. So F theta is the summation of Fx and Z. So we have dropped the screening term and here to keep it simple. But we know that the implications of screening term, they are serious. But just for the simplicity, we have dropped that to keep this thing simple. But in real life, we have to consider the screening effect. Otherwise, we'll have this hyperbolic, the infinity problem of the scattering cross section will become infinite for theta is equal to 0, right? You can see the problem here. Suppose you put theta is equal to 0, so this will become infinite, right? You can see all, right? So that's the reason that it's a problem of the it's an implication of dropping the screen effect. Anyway, so but we are not worried about too much about that, but because we are looking at the.
Sir, why this sine theta by 2?
Actually, this is these are different books will use different terms, but I'm not too much worried about sine theta 2 term, because this, see, we are not deriving this equation. I'm worried about I'm actually concerned about whether, see, what I understand from this equation, what I have to take. See, F theta is inversely proportional to 1 over sine theta. So theta is so small, so if you take theta by 2 or you take theta, it does not matter. It will decay because sine theta is proportional to theta for theta so small. Theta is very small in electron microscopy. You all know that. So what it means that F theta will decay as a function of inversely proportional to theta. So when you increase the angle, so scattering cross section will decay, right? We have explained this, right?
Yes, yes.
So that's what it means. Don't worry about, you can take it 2 theta or theta or whatever, it does not matter. Another take home message is lambda actually, right? Lambda. So lambda is inversely proportional to energy. So now I can put energy here, right? And another term is proportional to Z. So it is proportional to Z. So these are, I'm sorry. So that's what matters actually, right? Yeah. Because see, these equations are not perfect. That's why I don't like to preach too much about equations, and I don't like equations because no equation is perfect actually. Rarely few equations are perfect, right? E is equal to mc square, that is considered as even that is not perfect actually. Okay, so I emphasize on learning the concepts rather than. Anyway, so but because you asked this question, so now we have, so this term Fx is basically taken from X-rays, scattering factor for X-rays, which is well known. So see, you can see that how the electron microscopy people are they have cleverly stolen from neutron people and from X-ray people, and they have built their own world actually. So appearance of Fx is the reminder that F theta is a fundamental result of wave nature of the electron. So this basically another way of understanding this equation is that this is the wave nature and this is the particle nature. So the Rutherford equation is actually particle nature, and then and these X-rays are basically represented by wave nature. So it's basically integration of, many people are confused about wave or particle nature. You can see that both are coming together. It's like you know, duality and non-duality in Vedanta, right? Vedanta, you have non-dual Vedanta and dual Vedanta. So Vivekananda practiced non-dual, actually, that it's all one, right? Anyway, so now we are back. We are also comparing this equation, which is more sophisticated, with our simple equations, right? Very simple equation, and we reach to the same conclusion. Actually, you can see, you can compare both, and but our conclusions are exactly same. There's no difference actually, right? And these are the conclusions. 3 conclusions. You can spend time later on. I'm not going to spend time here because I have explained this many times. So now we are back to the same curve. So here you have integration. So this curve does not change much. And one student asked this question earlier, I think long back. I don't remember who asked this question. That I think Hemant or somebody, that why should we plot it sine theta over lambda? Who asked this question? It was a very good question actually. Hemant, तुमने पूछा था?
No, sir.
Somebody, I don't know who asked this question, but some student. So you can, then I explained using Brack's equation. So I'm explaining it again, that it is actually convenient way of, and this is the way you will find even in the small angle X-ray scatterings, neutron scattering, all these communities, neutron community, X-ray community, they all love to present. This is the natural way, because this is more natural actually, because you can see that it is inversely proportional to T. So because diffraction happens, another way of answering, another way, physical way of answering, you know, I answered in a mathematical way, but let me answer it in a physical way, because my answer, I don't like to give mathematical answers. Let me answer it in a physical way. In physics, actually, you will see diffraction happens. It's also by nature. Diffraction happens in the reciprocal lattice. So this is actually the representation of the reciprocal lattice. It's inverse of angstrom. You can see that this is actually angstrom inverse. So we are actually going directly to the because see this is for the single atom, right? This is the scattering cross section for the single atom. So now, if you take many atoms, so that means you will get something like this. So this is for several atoms. It's a basically assembly of atoms, right? So now it will show this kind of a pattern instead of this only for single atom. See this, and and this is for several atoms for a crystalline material. This is for amorphous. Now you can see that these are the peaks, which we see here, actually, or peaks or whatever intensity, basically fringes, and this is actually this is basically diffraction pattern, and this is in the so diffraction pattern is a natural phenomenon. You can see it has nothing to do with the electron microscope. You can see diffraction everywhere, and diffraction by the laws of nature, it is always dimensions, you know, the length inverse, 1 over length. It is not designed by any physicist. It's a law of nature. So diffraction always, the scale of diffraction is always a length inverse. Okay, whether you take meter inverse or whatever, whether it is sound wave or light wave or anything, you can take light wave, you know, visible light. You can take IR, you can take terahertz, you can take radio waves, and you take diffraction from those waves. It will be always in the reciprocal lattice, always in the reciprocal lattice. And so that's why it makes sense, because diffraction mathematically is coming, it's a mathematical representation of those intensities, right? Because you can see that this is a bright intensity here, bright one. So this represents this part, right? And then there is a decay in the intensity, and you can see that there is a dark fringe, and then there is a bright fringe, and there's a brightness, and then it's like this, okay? And so it makes sense that I plot it like this because angstrom inverse, because this is angstrom inverse actually. or nanometer inverse, whatever. So this is the scale of diffraction pattern. Scale is not nanometer, it is nanometer inverse. Please note that. Any question here? So I hope this this question is clear. Again and again, I've been forming. It was very nice question, and mathematically you can understand this by Bragg's equation. You forget n because n is not needed here, but you can say that sine theta over lambda is 1 over 2d. Okay, you can forget about 2 also is 1 over d, right? And that's how the, so d is the property of your material. D is the property of your material, right? Here there is no d here because I mean, so this is for single atom, so we don't consider d here. We are just simply concerned about sine theta, which is the angle, scattering angle, and lambda, because there is no concept of d. But when we take collection of atoms, then we have, you can read all those things. So f theta is here. F theta is contains components of elastic nuclear scattering, the Z term, and electron cloud interaction. Okay, taken from X-ray. So this actually has Z contrast. This does not have Z contrast. This does not have Z contrast. Okay, because it's a single atom, single electron interaction, electron cloud interaction. Unless the electron interacts with multiple electron multiple electrons, so it will have poor Z contrast actually. Yeah, it will have very poor Z contrast. Now you can plug in structure factor, which basically it represents the structures. As the name suggests, structure factor is it represents the structure. Okay, so this is electronic properties of an atom. This is the structural property. It represents the position of the atom, where the atom is located. So if you plug in both of these ideas, okay. So I know the scattering properties of each atom, and I know where each atom is located. Okay, now I know that as a function of angle, how this atom is scattering. This I know how this angle is scattering, how this atom is scattering. Sorry, how this atom is scattering. Fine. Now suppose my detector is here, okay, somewhere here. Now I'm observing how many waves are reaching here. So I will look at these waves which are reaching here. So these waves will merge and they will interfere with each other depending upon their phase relation. And depending upon the phase relation, you can have either valley, or you can have valley, or you can have peak. You can have valley, or you can have peak. It is solely dependent upon the phase relation between these waves. Now you understand. If you change, so that is basically, that brings the lattice parameters into the picture. So phase relation is the property of your lattice parameter A, B, C. Okay, alpha, beta, gamma. Okay, angle as well as all those things. So it basically represent this. Okay, so that's why you have all those HKL or the lattice, actually lattice properties or crystallography. This is basically crystallography. Now we have put in the crystallography picture. So this information, so now this information, if we can interpret this wave, this pattern of these waves reaching to this detector as a function of theta, okay, now then we can interpret what kind of atoms we have and how they are arranged. So what kind of atoms we have, and this is the chemistry, and this is the crystallography, right? So chemistry and crystallography, both information we get if we can interpret these. This is the application. This is the application. Okay, this is what we get from our real life. Yeah. So I hope you understand the concept actually behind these things. I'm sorry for this. Yeah. So how is the diffraction? So now you know you have the diffraction pattern. So this is an interview question. Many people ask in several interviews. Suppose I asked my student also, Kubey Chaudhary. Okay, so for amorphous carbon, why do we still see one peak? So what he showed, Kubey Chaudhary, that you showed actually one. Only one very broad peak, and you can see actually though that peak actually, you know what he was showing was actually one prominent peak. I mean, obviously not always you get, this is basically a calculated one, and when you measure, you don't really, these things get merged, and you get actually large hump here, and you don't actually see these subtle things. And also this is electron diffraction, and that was X-ray diffraction. So as a function of, so basically it is seen by basically short range ordering. Because of the short range ordering, even amorphous specimens will show some faint fringes. So please remember, I'm repeating it, that why do you get amorphous samples? You still get one ring or two rings, or maybe third ring, very faint ring. The intensity basically drops. You can see the intensity is dropping. Here also intensity is dropping, right? And here also intensity is dropping, right? It's very bright, and then intensity is dropping like this. And here also you can see, the intensity is dropping radially outwards. Okay, here intensity is dropping. This is for the amorphous, and this is for polycrystalline. And similarly for single crystalline, you will have central, I think you have seen many times, but I'm drawing it again. You will, for single crystalline specimen, you will see this kind of a diffraction pattern, a dot actually. Okay. So this ends today's lecture. So next time we will take up inelastic scattering. Elastic scattering is over. So after we finish inelastic scattering, your foundation will be completed. And if you are interested, I can teach advanced topics a little bit. But I had this thought in my mind today, and earlier also. Earlier we last year actually we this 2020 batch, I noticed that to explain the concepts when we had offline classes, it took me less time to explain the concepts in the offline classes. And because I saw the transition actually, when I switched over to the Zoom classes, many bright students of my class, those students were bright actually. I don't want to name those students. They were very good actually. And they were struggling on the Zoom classes. So I had to slow down my speed, and that suffered actually. That increased the number of classes which I was taking. So so the speed has suffered here mostly. So but I don't want to compromise on your understanding. Okay, so I rather teach very slowly and repeat several times and explain it properly, rather than just trying to finish the syllabus, because online teaching anyway has a lot of limitations. And so if you have any question, doubt, you can ask me now. Otherwise we'll switch over to the next series.